And we are live. The SMT Podcast. It is October 15th, 2021. A huge show tonight, a special guest, Mr. Roger Entner. I've been trying to get you on the show for the longest. I just wanted to find a day that worked for you. And then I was gonna
Well, here
I
I
was
am.
gonna beg and gravel at your
You
feet and
don't
try to
need to
get you
beg
on.
and tell. Come on, come on.
Roger, I followed you on Twitter for a while. I've, followed you a lot of what you post, I know what you do. So what I want you to do is if you could just take a minute. I know, all right, so Roger Entner, the founder and lead analyst of Recon. Okay, so we know
Yes.
what you do exactly. Maybe you could kind of just tell the audience some of the typical projects that you have been a part of and maybe just a little bit about your experience.
Well, at Recon Analytics, we do research and consulting for the telecom industry, right? Um, and that's both wireless and wireline and sometimes a little bit of cable. And we help, companies to make better decisions, to better understand the market situation and hopefully have better analysis than what they can get somewhere else. So it's like, you know, why and what is happening, like, where. So for example, we're working with a small rural telco, and we're completely redoing their price plans. We help them where to build out, things like that. We do things for wireless carriers and analyze the market and figure out what comes next, where are the holes, where are the opportunities, where do they make mistakes, right? Or where do other people make mistakes? How can they uh, optimize that? Uh, I've been working with industry associations like CTIA for 20 years, right? And so help them position better the industry when they talk to Capitol Hill and FCC. And so that's what we do. And so we help companies that do business with wireless carriers and help them understand them a little bit better. And so I'm doing recon analytics for now 10 years, right? Before that, I was with a company called Nielsen, which you know from the television ratings. During my time, they also were the largest provider of market research services to the wireless industry. And so we did a lot of work helping all the wireless carriers. Before that, to Nielsen, I came through an acquisition with a company called IAG Research, which did effectiveness measurement of advertising, predominantly television, but radio, online, all of that. So, Nielsen measured how many eyeballs are watching an ad. We measured what did people remember, what did people take away with from the ad, and how long did they actually remember it? Because it doesn't matter how many people see an ad if you don't remember what it's
Sure.
for
Right.
and you don't remember the message, then it's a wasted opportunity and wasted
Mhm.
money. And I was with Ovum beforehand and with the Yankee Group. They were both also two industry analysis firms. Ovum is now Omdia, and Yankee is part of 461 Group, 451 Group, which is now owned by SNL Kagan and the S&P Group. And
And
before
all that
that,
happened after you left. That was all after you had
happened
left.
after I left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's now 20 years back, and I worked for LCC, which builds and designs wireless network, which is now owned, I think, by Nokia. So I've been around for a few years.
Incredible wisdom and knowledge and experience over the years. I'm sure you've accrued more wireless chops within a season than say someone, just an enthusiast such as myself. So we appreciate your perspectives, and that's why we wanted you on the show.
Well, I've been blessed to meet, almost all the movers and shakers in this industry over the last 20 years. And one of the things I always say is numbers and facts don't make decisions. People make decisions, because I've delivered and sold the same data to all of the carriers, to all of the decision makers, and they all took something else away from it and made a different decision based on it.
Roger, I'm a history guy. I have to ask you this before I forget. I'm a history guy. You've seen executive CEOs and the companies coming and going and all these things. Who has left a lasting impression with you? Who has impressed you over the years from the wireless telco executives?
The most?
Top 3.
Denny Striegel.
Verizon
Wireless, the father of Verizon Wireless. Such a great leader, focused, knows how to prioritize the right things, right? John Ledger, that turnaround at T-Mobile, very impressive. Third,
I know you don't want to leave anyone out, so it's going to be
there's so many good leaders, right?
One more. Just name one more.
Dan Hesse, probably. I had him on my podcast, and he revolutionized the industry several times, and both as a top dog, as an underdog. And it's a lot harder to revolutionize the industry as a top dog than as an underdog. And for example, Danny did the same thing. He was the leader. And I always said, like, Danny was the defender of the faith until the day he became the leader of the revolution, right? And so I remember in the early 2000s, with the Yankee group, we always had an event, and I invited Danny to come, and he came, right? And at that time, we still had early termination fees, where people couldn't leave. And he announced we'd take away with early termination fees. And he did that as the leader, right? And it kept the whole industry on its toes. Later on this day, Ralph De La Vega, who was then CEO of Singular, came, and he was like, okay, we certainly he was surprised, and Ralph's also an awesome leader, right? I have seen very few people who can motivate and enthuse their base as much as Ralph can.
Maybe John. I think
probably John, but
no. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll transition to modern day, because those are all executives of yesteryear. They've all moved on to different positions in different companies or retired. Which carrier of the major mobile network operators do you think is best positioned to excel within the 5G era? And when I mean success, they're gonna catch their stride, build a strong network, and show some growth and do well with their financials, the whole thing included. The 5G era, maybe we'll call it the next 5 years, maybe, foresight.
Well, it's T-Mobile's game to lose, right? They have an advantage on spectrum. They have a lot of momentum. But when I look at, I know Mike Sievert, great guy. I know him for 20 years. But where I get concerned is when all the high-fiving happens and they declare victory before it's over, before it's actually even started.
Yeah.
And whenever I see somebody pronounce that they're entitled to win for an entire era, I always get like, really? Right? You have AT&T that's struggling in the stock market. But I think
that's a good choice of words. Yes.
But I think operationally, execution-wise, I'm impressed with what John Stankey is doing, right? He is, but then, he needs to do something different than what Randall did, because that was an era that was basically 10 lost years.
An entire decade.
Yeah.
Of horrible financial decisions, horrible purchasing decisions, no dedication to wireless or fiber. I mean, it just completely opposite right now, right? It's a U-turn.
Yeah, and so the challenge for John Stankey is that the AT&T today is actually SBC Communications, right? It was the runt of the litter, the smallest of the baby bells. Everybody thought they were going to die, and with Ed Whittaker, they refused to die. And they bought every company that they could, with the exception of the ones that Verizon bought, right? But their modus operandus is very interesting. Is they bought a company, they drove cost out of the cost out of the business, and faster than revenue declined. And with that better cash flow, with that better profitability, they bought the next company, right? And with it, they bought Ameritech, they bought Pac Bell, they bought AT&T Wireless, the old AT&T Wireless, AWE. They bought Bell South, and then there was Verizon, and they couldn't buy Verizon, right? And to keep that old momentum and that old engine running to a certain extent, beyond other things, they figured, okay, what's the number one thing that runs over wireless networks? It's video. So why don't we buy the biggest video distributor, the number one out there?
But it wasn't as they predicted. Like, their perception of the video was misguided. It wasn't the delivery of the video. They were buying studio. They were buying.
Well, that came only afterwards. So basically, they realized. And by the way, they were told beforehand, right? So I remember at the press conference where they announced that they were buying DirecTV, everybody said, "You're buying at the peak, right?" And
I thought they were buying it at the end, Roger.
Huh?
I thought they were buying it at the end.
No. They bought at the peak valuation. They bought at peak
Oh, okay.
Peak valuation, peak customer base.
Okay.
It was pretty foreseeable that it would go downhill, but no, we're going to buy the customer relationships and we're going to migrate this. Basically, gravity does not exist, right? And then they realized, oh my God, a distributor like DirecTV, like Dish, is being like cable TV companies are being squeezed to death by content owners and by television stations.
Yeah,
when you look at it,
yeah, right.
and it's a deliberate plan by the Disneys, by all of these guys to basically squeeze these guys to death, because that money that they want more helps them build their own consumer direct to consumer business, right? And it makes people hate the cable companies and the satellite companies, because what are they going to do? Raise prices,
right?
And so the finger was pointed at the distributors, and then AT&T was like, well, if the distributors are really the ones, then let's buy the best content owner that's available, and that was Time Warner Cable. But you can clearly see, by the way, when the different companies have woken up to it, right? Charlie Ergen woke up to it, and he bought wireless licenses because he saw, I'm being squeezed to death by these guys.
He spent the better part of the decade accruing licenses, right?
Yeah. And the cable TV companies turned themselves into cable internet companies. And they don't give a hoot anymore about if you buy video from them or not.
Roger,
right?
you've earned the ability to say as you please. No worries.
Uh,
I appreciate it. Thank you. Kind of to kind of go off of that. Essentially, I see AT&T moving a little bit differently today than they have in the past. The way they moved
Undoubtedly.
before was really like super greedy. They didn't care about anything, with the exception of just accruing what they perceive to be wealth acquisitions. Uh, so they're definitely different today compared to the recent past. They have aggressive phone promotions. Their plans are competitive. They offer, all types of rate plans from starter unlimited to these premium access elite plans and such. Is this a new AT&T? Do you feel it's sustainable and
Well,
permanent?
well, different leaders make different decisions, right? We had Randall Stevens as CEO. He came to the conclusion that we had maximum penetration in wireless, and that he needed to look somewhere else to increase revenue and profitability.
Roger,
to build that.
could you tell me if you agree with me? I'm not going to say who's the worst CEOs of all time, but let's just say made some of the worst decisions of all time.
Undoubtedly.
Gary Forsey and Randall Stevenson.
Yeah.
It has to be, because Gary Forsey, I mean, if you go back to,
Dwayne
what are we talking,
Ackerman
like
too. Dwayne Ackerman too.
go back to like 2003. I mean, the moves that they did with the whole Nextel acquisition and the issues and everything revolving around it, they were purging 1 million customers a quarter.
Yeah.
That is absurd. And then literally what the decade could have been worse, but Randall Stevenson wasn't able to acquire T-Mobile. Like that
Well, with
they had to
that,
give up a
he
lot of
set up
money.
a
They had to give up a lot of
really strong
spectrum.
competitor, right?
Right.
Because he was very sure that he would win it. Had to give him $3 billion
And the spectrum and the roaming for 7 years, and
that really helped
T-Mobile.
T-Mobile turn things around with John Ledger's initiative.
Roger, do you agree? And this is just me. This is from nobody else, so I'm not speaking for anyone. As important as John Ledger was, he didn't have any bullets without the failed AT&T merger. He needed a network. He needed network access. He needed money. He was able to get that all in one fell swoop after the Metro deal.
Yeah, and imagine Sprint would have bought Metro, right? Dan Hesse was pushing very hard to buy Metro, and his board didn't let him.
But he maybe would have pulled it off if they had supported him in that.
Oh yeah, well, if Sprint would have bought Metro, it would have been completely different. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that 40% of gross ads for T-Mobile came from Metro, and vice versa. And so by taking out that choice, inevitably the churn for T-Mobile halved, right? Yeah. One of the big problems that T-Mobile always had was churn. Yeah. Awesome acquisition machine, but as quickly as they got the customers in, the other ones keep running out at the back. And so they were treading water because they were recycling customers left and right between Metro and them. And when you integrate it, suddenly, the net ads go through the roof, and because the churn has been halved. So John Ledger gets a lot of credit for all these wonderful ideas, right? And how he revolutionized with the Un-carrier ideas. It wouldn't have mattered half as much without the Metro acquisition. The Metro acquisition is the unsung hero here, and the integration of that operation was one of the best merger integrations I've ever seen. Right? As badly as it went at Sprint, because Sprint they tried to integrate, and at T-Mobile with Metro, And now with Sprint, they're migrating. They're not integrating the two systems. They're taking the customers from the Metro network and put them over to the T-Mobile network, or now from the Sprint network, they're taking them from the Sprint network and putting them on the T-Mobile network.
Yeah,
and that way you don't have that contamination.
Sure.
Because you have a stable network as it is.
Right. I was going to say the only thing I could compare would possibly be the Alltel Verizon, maybe because they seem to work so well with such similar
that didn't
networking.
Work at all.
Yeah.
That integration behind the scenes
was a mess.
Was an unmitigated disaster. the PR effort around keeping that contained was
they didn't lose customers. They kept everyone. You know, I don't really think they lost all that many customers. I can speak to the Ohio region. Pretty much most Alltel customers stayed Verizon.
Yeah, but the pain that
the
folks that went through, it was like,
yeah, I'm sure maybe I was one of the lucky ones.
The people still have bruises from that integration, and when you touch them, they scream.
How important is fiber to AT&T's success? Right, so they do fiber to home, they do fiber to business, and they need fiber for their 5G. So how and how much of a leg up does that give them compared to Verizon and T-Mobile?
Well, both Verizon and AT&T have a very heavy fiber build. AT&T has a bigger fiber build than Verizon.
Yeah.
T-Mobile is sourcing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you build it, you always have better economics. And you're doing a multi-use application, right? And it's a high fixed cost, low variable cost business. And so it helps you contain your cost, right, dramatically, and helps them, resell it to others. So it's an absolutely important segment. Now, when you look at it from a profit perspective, it's.
I just look at it. I looked at it
a while ago. So the EBITDA contribution of wireless was somewhere around $28 billion, and the EBITDA contribution of fiber of the residential fiber group was somewhere around $2 billion.
Sounds about right.
So it will be a very long day or a long time that a bad day in wireless will be made up by a good month in fiber, right?
But I do see it as one hand washes the other.
Yeah, of course, they work together.
Sure.
They are both critical because you build the wireless network on the fiber foundation. And without a good foundation, your building might topple over, right? You need a foundation.
Absolutely. Roger, Wall Street hates AT&T. Will this change soon? And how do you view the spinoff of the media assets?
Well, you have to ask Wall Street if they stop hating them, right?
I'm watching the stock drop every day, so.
Yeah, no, and
I don't get it.
Well, because
I'm a little confused.
The stock market is short-term, long-term rational, short-term irrational. And yes, they're punishing AT&T for the sins of the past,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And you have to give AT&T and here John Stankey credit that he ripped off the Band-Aid, right? What to me was the they communicated that transaction, in my opinion, not very well. because when you look at it at the day of the close, right? You had, the headlines that you saw was that AT&T is selling Warner Media for $43 billion or whatever it was. And oh my God, they bought it for 85.
They lost so much money, right?
But that was not the story.
No.
That was the stupid math. Sorry if I say it like that.
But no, if you think about it, what they're saying, Roger, is that was the thing that people hated.
But it wasn't, because what was completely missed is that the combined entity was 71% owned by the AT&T shareholders. At the close, Discover was worth around $35 billion. That means if you take that 29% is $35 billion, that means the rest of it implicitly is valued somewhere around $100 billion.
Roger, they were also able to write off, I believe, almost $20 billion in debt.
Yeah, on top of it.
So if anything, the investment side, they should have been seeing this as wins.
Yeah, but exactly, but it was not very well communicated by AT&T that this is actually and it was positioned as Discover buys Warner Media. In reality, if I own 71%,
you're the A side.
I bought you.
Exactly, you're the A side on that transaction. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So what AT&T actually did is it bought itself Discover and a new CEO, right? In Zaslav. And that's what really happened, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we fast forward, the stock price of Discover, crumbled and is a fraction of it.
Sure.
So now that whole math doesn't make sense anymore. But at the time of the close, I would have, at the same time, Zaslav is a very, proud man with a very big paycheck, biggest paycheck around. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he would have taken that kind of humiliation of John Stankey saying, I bought you and, I need a new CEO and here run into the sunset, but my shareholders own you, right? I don't know if that would have worked, but at the close of the merger, this was amazing of financial engineering of the AT&T guys, right? They just kept it a good secret.
Yeah. Do you mind if we pivot a little bit to Verizon?
Sure.
All right. Any thoughts or impressions on the initial deployment of Verizon's 5G ultra wideband networking? Maybe some thoughts on how you see it today, how you perceive it to maybe play out in the future.
With a microscope?
So what I mean is you have millimeter wave, right? So that's the today. We have C-band. That's the tomorrow. Yeah. Looking at the ultra wideband approach and what it's going to include, maybe you could kind of speak to it.
Well, C-band, both for Verizon and AT&T, is like in that Goldilocks zone of giving you propagation and capacity, right? It's not as far as low band, but a lot more capacity. Not as much capacity as millimeter wave, but you get a lot more range. I still assume you will have problems getting into buildings, unless your cell site spacing gets really tight, right? But then everybody is fighting more or less with similar amounts of weapons at their disposal, and so For Verizon, this is certainly an opportunity to shine. It depending. They used to be the undisputed leader in network, and that's what they really traded on. Now, it depends on who you ask, which is, and some people in some tests even show them as third, right? It's something very difficult to stomach for anybody who knows the Verizon 1.0 guys, that the Verizon 2.0 guys have given away that network advantage around 5G. Now, at the same time, it's a towards the end of a G, at least in urban areas, you have network parity. T-Mobile enjoyed that, right? And because enough money got poured into the network that your spectrum position no longer matters, right? And the same thing will happen in 5G. You have your early lead by somebody because the whole competitive mix gets reshuffled, and then the question is how long can you save that when does reality catch up? When does perception catch up to reality?
Sort of like an arms race of sorts. Like someone gets a bit of a leap,
Yeah.
Maybe for a year or 2 years, and then someone else comes in with something, or puts their all into a project that works out for them.
But typically, from my experience, it takes at least 1 year for the reality on the ground, meaning your network is the same or better, for it to show up in the customer perceptions.
That's about right. Yeah, I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
And so the Verizon guys need to execute, but traditionally they have shined at execution. And
the execution's interesting. You bring that up. How about the fixed wireless access ambitions? 5G home, 5G business. They want to, I think the number is they're shooting for 15 million households by 2025. I think T-Mobile wants to be in 7 to 8 million. So do you think they execute this properly? Do you think that they succeed at reaching these goals? They are quite ambitious.
Well, it all depends if the stimulus bill and the telecom stimulus bill in Congress will get passed or not.
That would increase the likelihood.
That would decrease their likelihood because
because the competition, right?
Because there's $40 billion to go around shoring up rural and suburban fiber deployments, right? And I don't think they can compete with gigabit fiber.
No, they cannot.
They cannot. The more that stimulus gets delayed or even canceled, we don't know that, right? The better it is for the 5G players, right? Millimeter 5G, you have a very high reuse pattern because your cell is only 200 yards wide, which is an advantage here. I remember a guy called Dr. John Saw. I don't know if you've heard of him, right?
I have, yeah.
Yeah,
Dr. John Saw. He's in a different role today. Just
very smart guy, very good engineer, chief technical officer of Clearwire, and
Sprint, also the Sprint, head man.
At Clearwire, right? 2.5 gigahertz. And I remember it like yesterday at a analyst briefing in New York. He went on and on about the advantages of 2.5, and that the 2.5 gigahertz network that he's building in Manhattan looks exactly the same like the 700 megahertz network that Verizon is building, but is actually better. And And I listened to him, and I completely agree with him. Because one of the things that he said was like, here in Manhattan or in other densely populated areas, we are not coverage constrained, but capacity constrained. On top of it, having good coverage, good signal strength is actually a problem. Because in 4G and in 5G, every cell site that my cell site sees is an interferer. And your signal to noise ratio goes through the roof. And so the advantages of 700 megahertz are completely wasted here because they have to tone down the power so much. They actually have to tone down the power more than he has to in 2.5. The same is true for the 3.5, right? I can reverse the logic and say exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives me a lot of hope for the 3.5, as long as you get close enough, as long as you have the cell site density, because you can build the cell site density, because the buildings and the walls help you to control and mitigate interference, right?
We did get a little bit of disclosure from executive and senior vice presidents on, like from Verizon specifically, they feel comfortable with their grid.
Yeah.
You know, they spoke to that, and that was one of the things I was concerned about. If you've built your network on an AWS grid, I agree.
No.
If it's built on a PCS grid, I don't agree.
But if you look at it, look in urban America. I'm talking about urban, right? The story changes suburbia and further out.
Sure, I'm speaking from a general standpoint, but like if you're looking at the urban market, they're going to be heavily investing into millimeter wave
and C-band
and C-band. No, I understand,
C-band, undoubtedly.
But we cannot downplay the importance, the offload that the millimeter wave is going to do for them to keep those mid-band channels clear.
Yes.
For every moment somebody is outside, millimeter wave will do the heavy lifting.
We'll see, right? But
we'll see. But I'm only speaking to their goal, Roger. Their goal is to get 50% of urban traffic on millimeter wave. I'm only speaking to their goal. I don't know how it's going to execute. Just speaking to the goal.
Good luck.
It's going to be hard. They're going to have to put up a lot of no's.
There's and I want to be an astronaut, and here we are talking, right?
Roger. Hashtag I want to be an astronaut. That one was from Roger. Well, speaking of Verizon now, we're kind of in the fold. Media perks, the content, the benefits that you get of being a premium Verizon customer. Are they focusing too much on this? What's the business with the premium upsell? Do you think this is the right thing for them to do as a business?
They are clearly driving profitability, right? And they're going more and more premium. Now, there's only a limited number of premium folks around, right? Not everybody is premium. And so, look at the kryptonite for Verizon's premium strategy is Magenta Max and the premium unlimited plan from AT&T. The better they do, the worse it gets for Verizon. Mm-hmm. And so, to a certain extent, they're trying to wring more water out of a stone. They're trying to get more wallet instead of getting more market share. They're not saying no to more customers, but they're definitely trying to get more wallet share.
Sure.
But you have then again the problem that a lot of that differentiation relies on the differentiation of a different company, right? Traditionally, you signed up for Verizon because of Verizon.
Mm-hmm.
Now you sign up because of Disney Plus, before, or
ESPN Plus, Hulu.
ESPN Plus, all of these things. So who are you actually buying, right? The logic and what the Verizon executives have said, like, we're the biggest content distributor in this country, right? Nobody has more
A
relationship.
portfolio, right?
Yeah, and we can distribute the content to so much more, and we are buying wholesale and we're selling retail. I've heard that story before, and it didn't end that well, right? It didn't end well for DirecTV. It didn't end well for the cable guys. It didn't end well for.
But I don't see how they lose in distributing, only because they had Go 90. That was a failure. The AOL, the Bloomberg, the Yahoo acquisition. Like, I looked at all those as missteps, and they were horrible. And they just cut their losses with
because
everything.
There were little missteps, right?
Yeah, right.
It was $7 billion. They pay that out of the postage account.
$7 billion would have kept them going in their network build.
Yeah, but in the big picture, it's like $7 billion is not that much money. For you and me, absolutely. I would retire with $7 billion. I would give you one, for inviting me. Shouldn't, but $7 billion is not that much money for a company that big, right? And it beats, investing. What was it? Near $100 billion. Like the guys in blue. So from that perspective, it was a small misstep.
Okay, Roger, I have to ask you this then, because this stems from this. Thoughts on Hans? Is he the man for the job as Verizon moves forward, right? The future of the company. We know he is today. I read a story about 6 months ago about Hans' golden parachute. That got me to thinking that there is some
golden parachutes. I'm sorry. They all fall soft. They all fall very soft.
I understand, but I haven't read anything about any other CEO. That's the only story I found on the current group of CEOs. So I wanted to just.
You can look it up in all of the CEO.
Well, no, there was an article printed about this, is what I'm saying. So what I'm asking you is simply put, in your perception, the way with the premium upsell, trying to get the deeper wallet play, do you like where this is going?
I think it's a risky undertaking. When you look at it, AT&T, if you flip the conversation, AT&T basically said, we're sick and tired of being the share giver, right? We want to take share, and then we monetize the conversation, the relationship. Same story with T-Mobile. When you have two wolves going after you, and all you want to do is get bigger and fatter, but not run as fast, they're going to catch up with you and eat you up, right? So, I think what Verizon needs to do, and Hans is a great person.
He does seem a good man. I think
he's a very, very good man.
With our conversations, Roger, I'm convinced that you have a good grasp on these people. I think they are inherently good. They're just trying to navigate their company through these financial times.
But a lot of the wireless stuff is actually run out by Ronan Dunn, and Ronan knows this market extremely well. Ronan is fighting it day to day, right? That's the guy I look towards much more than I look towards Hans. And their difficulty is to balance both financial and growth opportunities, right? And remember when I threw in the name Dwayne Ackerman, right? you know, and that was Bell South. And Bell South always prided itself of having superior margins. And I once said to Dwayne Ackerman, it will be the epitaph on your tombstone. We had great margins. And SBC bought them because Bell South prioritized margins over everything else.
Over growth, over operations, yeah.
And that killed them. Whereas, Ed Whitaker's machine were just predators, right? And you have to be a predator in this market. And they both were financial, operational, but then especially, eat or be eaten. And Bell South was in its little corner, playing with itself, trying to optimize margin, which just made them more and more attractive, right? As an acquisition target. And in the end, actually, they went to SBC and said, like, hey, can you please buy us? Right?
Yeah. Can we shift to T-Mobile a little bit, Roger?
Sure.
Awesome. I don't hold back with T-Mobile. I feel like they have put targets on themselves for a long time. The reason they've been able to avoid the pushback was because of John Legere. But post John Legere, they don't have that same Teflon coating. So post merger, I called this probably May or June of last year. Just my personal takes, my show, my perceptions on things. I don't speak to anybody else because I would never want to speak for someone. I felt there's only two possible outcomes that have happened post merger. Either T-Mobile is getting exposed for the way that things have always been, and now it's just coming to light. So maybe John was hiding something. I feel like that's the least likely scenario. But the other thing is, I see this more of a new identity under the CEO change. So of those two scenarios, which one is true?
Well, different CEOs make different decisions, right? It all comes down to it, right? And John Legere made different decisions than Mike Sievert did. By the way, the reason why John, quote unquote, was wearing Teflon was John doesn't get enough credit for being a terrific executor. Really, really, there's all that cookbook stuff and long hair and all of these things. John Legere is a gifted marketer and a brilliant executor. And when you look at what happened actually at T-Mobile with the integration, when it was John Legere running the company, they were defining growth by phone net add growth, right? Now it's about ARPA and broadening it and all of that stuff. And look, they got beaten on smartphone on phone growth,
With
recently by AT&T. Ooh, right? And before that, they got beaten by Charter in phone growth.
It's true, Roger. I get a lot of
1/3 of the country, not
right. I get a lot of pushback from a certain type of viewer, those that watch and listen to the show. And I say, I have a quote. I don't know, maybe somebody has said this in the past, but I have a quote, and that's what, don't listen to what carriers say, watch what they do. And part of the reason why I stick with this, Roger, is because they say anything. They can mask anything, they can manipulate any number, and they could pull it off. But I watch what they do because that is a true measure of their execution. So when I look at, say, for example, they talk about we're doing 5G like this, we're doing this. They start listing these things. Everything circles back to doing it the cheapest. They say best, but what they mean is cheapest. And I can prove it because I look at the CapEx plan for the next 3 years.
But if you go back to VoiceStream and Western Wireless days,
yeah,
just the beginning of T-Mobile, right? The mantra at these organizations has always been beat the vendor on price, beat the vendor on price, right? That has always been the case, that they have been the tight-fisted. There's nothing wrong with it, right?
No, there's nothing wrong with it, but they are masking what is really the thing. Everything that they do at these earnings reports, everything they do at these, I call them commercials. They say best, but what they mean is cheapest. I'm looking at the numbers. They are doing 5G the least expensive. They're doing 5G on double coupon day, is what I'm trying to say.
They are deploying it, and they have the advantage. We will see what happens, at the end of the year, early 2022, and that's when they really have competition with the other carrier C-band, right? So right now, I don't fault them for that. I find it always interesting, when they use free line promos as their growth engine, right? And Wall Street,
they've done it for years.
Doesn't fully understand how it works.
They must not, because I mean, myself and a couple of the guests here on the channel that we do the show, we've crunched some numbers, and we've seen some substantial additions via the free line promotions. And I know you've done your own, right. I know that there have been times where it was the driver and I didn't need to know the number. I looked at when they started it within the quarter. Yeah. That's when I knew the trouble was coming, Roger, when it was a month away from earnings, right? Or it was a month away from the quarter ending, and the million subscriber addition was at risk. That's when they were running the promotion.
Well, you have that promotion at the 15th of the month, right? Of the second month of the quarter. Mm-hmm. That's the oh shit promotion.
Right.
It's like, because they need the month ends, right? And then they know, oh my God, we had a bad quarter. And then they need 2 weeks for the signage and the promotion and all of that, and the media plan to come together. And then on the 15th of the following month, you see the promotion, right? And I was very impressed with T-Mobile in the first quarter, because they grew really well.
They did.
Without the promo, without promo lines, free lines.
And with Sprint gone.
And I'm like, wow, they really got the thing. Mm-hmm. And then was earnings call, and days later was mid-quarter, and the promo got turned back on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Watch what they do, right?
I'm like, okay, and I see you coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but they when you look at it, and Verizon and AT&T get rewarded on margin, and T-Mobile rewarded on growth, right? In a way, why AT&T is being beaten up is everybody is scared, senseless, that they can't get their margin together, right? And that's why T-Mobile is pumping out these free lines, because it's like, growth, right? Because that's what the analysts want from T-Mobile. Now,
the investors
the problem comes when T-Mobile is no longer growing, right? Or
right.
AT&T is growing faster than T-Mobile.
But AT&T has industry-leading ARPU.
Yeah.
It's very close to Verizon's. It's very close.
Yeah. But the thing is, when that whole investment concept is being, shredded to pieces when suddenly AT&T grows faster than everybody else, and
The stock
T-Mobile does not. Then what are you going to do, right? I think the Wall Street analyst community hasn't really adjusted yet to reality, right? They're still stuck in the thinking of the past, where Randall delivered margin by squeezing more and more money out of the smaller and smaller customer base, and losing share, or at least losing share every month, just like Verizon is now losing share every month, right? So at least subscriber share, Verizon will point out, oh, we're growing in revenue share.
Yeah, the growth share is they are losing. They don't grow. So
yeah,
I followed the merger trial really closely. I remember when the Manhattan judge, Victor Marrero, was overseeing the trial, and John Ledger and Marcello and Mike Sievert was there, right? And I don't. It must have been maybe the second or third last day. It was right before the Dish testimony, right before Charlie was up there, and the judge, Victor Marrero, said to Mike Sievert, he said, "Welcome to the big club, welcome to the good old boys club," because the Mavericks leaving, and he was speaking obviously to John, and the company was going to be different. I look back now, I mean, that guy, it was like a prophecy. Everybody was talking, and John had people tricked. John said that Mike Sievert was the uncarrier and all this. I mean, it was say whatever it took to get that deal done. And but Judge Victor Marrero saw right the way through it, but he couldn't do anything. He understood the climate, he understood the situation, and I think as long as T-Mobile did enough good out of the merger, no matter what the other bads were, they were like, this is what it is at this moment in time. They were going to approve the merger and it was going to proceed. So after all of that, and you look at all the moves since then.
And John left at the best possible time.
There was no better time to go.
Better time.
I joke and I say, I imagine a moment where John went to that first board meeting. His coffee was hot. He had just stirred his sugar in his creamer. He saw what was going up on the board and he walked out, and the drink was still hot, because it wouldn't make sense for him to stay. Too much was going to change from what he had established.
There was no upside for him, or no downside for him to leave, because here's the thing: if it all worked out, he could say, "Look, I taught these guys how to play it." And
so his legend continues either way, right?
Exactly, my legend continues. And if it goes downhill, he could say, "Well, what do you expect? The master
I had nothing to do with it.
The master leaves the room, and suddenly the kids, are kicking over the sandcastle, and it's not my fault, The same way when he joined AT&T, when he joined T-Mobile, right? I was there when he was kicked out of the AT&T party, by the way. We were standing across with each other talking when he got kicked out there. And, he had nothing to lose, right? He knew that if he was doing the same thing as his predecessors, he would have the same outcome. So he knew he needed to change. And at the same time, if he did the radical change, he would be the hero. And if it all blows up, he could say, well, this thing was so messed up, nobody could rescue that baby, right? So it was all upside. And I think, right now he's doing good with his money and giving away things, which I think is wonderful. But I think he's looking again for a no-lose opportunity. And that's the right thing to do, because I I told one of my other friends who was like in between jobs, and he's a CEO or was a CEO at the company, and he was about to take an offer, and I'm like, don't take it, because half of being a legendary or awesome CEO is you put yourself in the right situation. Don't make an unforced error. Put yourself in a situation where you can only win, right?
Yeah, putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, too many opportunities
An
for things to
unforced
go
error,
wrong.
right?
Yeah. To kind of pivot into, I don't know, I think this is going to happen. I look at the capital investments increasing. Verizon has increased year over year. AT&T has increased year over year. Sometimes they're increasing by 10 to 20% annually, right?
It's about $30 billion for them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
For the industry.
Sure.
35.
I don't know if I want to make a necessary prediction, but I feel like it is likely to occur. I think the first company to increase pricing in the 5G era is going to be T-Mobile.
Mm-mm.
I think it'll be them, and I think the reason for that is I'm watching the ARPU thing. I understand, Roger, but I'm watching this ARPU thing get brought up over and over again. Do you really think that T-Mobile Home Internet is going to generate that much money that they won't be able to raise pricing, or they won't have to?
So let me tell you my favorite economist joke, right? What do you get when a mafia don becomes when an economist becomes a mafia don? An offer you can't understand, right? The wireless industry is a non-collusionary oligopoly with a kinked demand curve, right? That's what it is in economics. So let's take this apart. Non-collusionary is because these guys don't get together in a smoke-filled back room and agree on prices. It's an oligopoly because it's a handful of players, a little bit more, right? A kink demand curve means that the price can only stay steady or go down, because the moment you raise prices, the consumers will leave and go to the competition. And we have seen over and over again, especially with price drops. Why is it? You said it yourself. Why is T-Mobile so successful? Because they're cheap.
If they are the affordable.
Raise prices, guess what? People will no longer come to T-Mobile. They will go to AT&T or to somebody else.
I feel like AT&T is the wild card here, but I think Verizon is more expensive enough to where T-Mobile could raise pricing and still be a little bit less than Verizon.
Yeah, but then you have also the cable guys. The cable guys are very aggressive on pricing now. Even on family plan.
They are.
If you look at it in their footprint, they have now 25% growth. SOGA. That's massive.
But that's still up in the air. I mean, nobody saw MVNO cable doing this well. I mean, I remember John Leisure saying, "No way, this is going to work." And I remember, I like
the line. The problem with cable is that they move at the speed of cable.
Yeah.
But the problem is they hired some really good wireless guys, and whipped it in shape, right? Yeah. And look, I look at the SOGA in their footprint. It's 25%.
All right.
They are neck and neck, if not sometimes even the leader in SOGA in their footprint. Just because don't look at market share. Don't look at subscribers in the past. That's a view in the distant past. The reason why these guys have 60, 80, 90 million customers is not today. It's what they did 5, 10, 20 years ago. What you have to look at, the performance today is predominantly, you have to look at SOGA.
They are getting
One of
about
the
a
things
half a
that-
million customers a quarter, Roger.
Hmm?
They're getting about a 500,000 customers a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Substantial. It is big.
it is substantial when you
Mhm.
look at when you look at SOGA is the most underestimated and ignored metric in when you look at when people or when people who are not that deep into wireless look at the thing, because in the end SOGA, because net adds is the combination between gross adds and disconnects, but they're two distinct things.
Sure.
And especially when you're a new company, when you just start out, right? For the first year, every gross ad is a net ad. That makes you grow really fast.
Sure.
Take Verizon, 90 million customers, give or take. 1% churn a month. That's 3% out of 90 million. That's a huge hill they have to dig. Their sales department has to get over before they get net ads, right? And when you're a small company with 2 or 3 million customers, and you have 25% SOGA, 25% SOGA, that's massive. It gives the guys at the established carriers ulcers.
I was gonna ask you about some other MVNO things. Like since we started talking about cable, it jogged my memory to ask you which MNO is the most, or should I say, which carrier, mobile network operator, is the most MVNO friendly? Who's most inviting?
Verizon currently.
Apparently. Well, okay,
they
so they got
up all the guys, right? And as an MVNO leader, you don't care, what color these guys are. You don't care the network. You look at where do you get the best deal. And apparently Verizon gives really, really good deals.
Roger, T-Mobile's weird right now when it comes to MVNO. They terminated a lot of MVNO contracts and let things expire, and they let it all go. AT&T signs on with Dish. Verizon signs Mobile X. Verizon wants TracFone. It's a weird, unusual time right now with MNOs in respect to MVNOs. Do you see it that way? It's a little unusual.
Well, if there's one thing constant in this industry, then it's change, right? And it's surprising that T-Mobile is not more aggressive here, right?
Very much surprising. I really do think that this is, I'm not going to call it a fatal flaw. I mean, we just don't know. But I will say they move very strangely for a company that will compete so fiercely for actual customers, but moves in a different way amongst the industry operations. Like, since when would Verizon give better rates to Cox Communications than T-Mobile? Since when would Verizon give Mobile X a better rate? I know that Peter approached T-Mobile. I know he approached everybody. He had to do his due diligence. It would
I'm
be
sure
foolish.
he talked to everybody.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So it's just weird. And this is why I hark back to the point that Mike Sievert was never the Un-carrier. And I wish John Ledger never said that.
I think I think you're a little bit too hard on Mike.
Well, I have to, but it's not really hard on Mike. I feel duped by John. He said this guy was the guy behind the thing. And I'm like, John.
You should stop looking at this like a religion, and there's the Messiah coming, and this is the successor of the Messiah. This is a business. They're business people, and the John Ledger I did not think that the John Ledger we saw at T-Mobile was any different to the John Ledger that we saw, on Capitol Hill when there was a hearing on Global Crossing. The guy looked completely different, but the behavior was exactly identical. John recognized he couldn't be, and by the way, there's videotape on YouTube where he and Maxine Walters had a run-in with each other. And, it's like, I always say my favorite line was like when Maxine Walters grilled him on how many jobs he could have saved with a sign-on bonus and pestered him to calculate it. And he said, like, as a rule of thumb, I don't do math in public, right? It's the same Maverick style. It's just, if you look at the video, then he looked at Gordon Gekko and as CEO of T-Mobile, he looked like part of the grunge underground, right? And now he left, and he has changed his look too. The man is doing what needs to be done for the role at hand. And I admire that, right? But he executes and does things really, really well. And, when you look at it, typically the argument is for MVNO, it's idle capacity. It's either we sell it or not. And it's really high margin. The counter argument is, it's another competitor. It might take customers away from me. It might take more customers away from us. But
that's the wrong process, right, Roger? They should look at it as if they're on the network. Yes.
On contribution, right? Mm-hmm. So what does an MVNO pay? Somewhere between $15-$20, right? Somewhere in that neighborhood. Maybe 25, right?
Okay.
But look at the contribution margin you get from your own customers. That's at least as high, right? So you actually make in dollars and cents more money from your own customer than through the MVNO. And so when you say, I don't care more about the margin, and by the way, for T-Mobile, what is it? $2 billion? Something like that? It doesn't make or break the bank, really. If T-Mobile has a good quarter, it doesn't matter. And if T-Mobile has a bad quarter, it doesn't matter either, right? Whereas, when you look at it, where do most MVNO customers come from? Verizon and AT&T.
The MNO, right?
So, and the biggest MNOs. So, when you look at it from a Verizon perspective, if they lose a customer and it goes to the MVNO, even on their network, they lose money. They lose contribution dollars. But if you're resigned to somebody else giving you the network, it's better to get something back than nothing.
Sure.
Right. And that's the logic for Verizon that Verizon is currently following. It's like, we rather get, a fraction of the lost customer back. And hopefully we lose, the other guys are losing more than a third, than 2/3, so that we're all even.
I truly believe that Verizon would rather have 10 million MVNO customers than 10 million people on their starter unlimited, because the MVNO customers, they wouldn't have to serve. Like, they wouldn't have to take their customer service calls. No, like, they wouldn't have to service them in stores. They wouldn't have to take their customer care calls. Verizon has done a lot of things with their app to reduce the interaction with the customer. I'm just, it's the sense I get as a customer over the last 5 to 10 years. The store has become de-emphasized. They want you spending less time there unless you're buying something.
Well, different leaders again, right?
Yeah.
10 years ago, Danny was running the show, and then Lowell took over, and now Hans, and the approach is different, right? T-Mobile put just service points in a lot of stores, but they're all manned by Assurant, one of the two.
It's a
right?
it's Assurion. Oh,
Yeah.
Assurant, the old Sprint company.
No, there are two companies that do handset insurance and refurbishing. One's Assurant, and the other one
Assurant.
Okay. One is Assurant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they backward integrated into handset refurbishment because their profit margin is driven by that.
What has impressed you in the last year in telco? Anything? You got your hands crossed, your arms crossed.
Well,
that means you're gonna have to dig for this one, because I feel like it's you've seen so much and you've gotten to know so many unique individuals. It might be hard, to find something that really sticks out.
Well, it's a dramatic turnaround at AT&T, right? It's in less than a year, 10 years of corporate building was undone, right? That is like mind-blowing. There will be, business school case studies about this, of how a company can build an empire, or can build something so long dedicated, and then you have a new CEO who actually worked very closely with the old CEO,
Very
right?
close.
Handpicked successor,
Mm-hmm.
Who undoes it in record speed, right?
That's fast, yeah.
We've
Was
never
it under a
seen
year,
that
Roger?
before. Huh?
Under 1 year?
Under 1 year.
Under 1 year.
We've never seen that before, right? When before Randall was stepping down, I said, they asked me about Randall's legacy, and I said, I was asked the same question when Ed Whittaker stepped down, and I said, we will see and judge Ed Whittaker's legacy on how it's executed under Randall. And in the same way, we can judge Randall's legacy in how John Stankey executes on it, right? Completely unraveled.
It is so different.
It's back. It's back to Ed Whittaker days.
Roger, AT&T fought in courts so hard. Randall fought so hard to get all of this media, and to just, in the name of greed,
But if it's not the right thing to do, then you have to stop it, right? It's when you come to the conclusion, this is not it, then it's the right decision to undo it. We can talk about the timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is when you come to the realization, there is no synergy between these operations.
There was none. They thought there was. They must have thought there was. They really believed it.
Here's the other thing. It's like an AT&T with Warner Media, with DirecTV, requires such a huge, finely tuned executive team. the demand on controlling a company that is this widespread and this is extremely difficult and is not rewarded by Wall Street. Wall Street, it's literally called the conglomerate discount. The more disparate companies you put together, the bigger the discount. That's why you probably don't even remember AT&T, ITT, right?
ITT?
ITT, right? Huge conglomerate of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
They're all broken apart, right? Because the value of the parts was by far more than the total. Because it is so difficult to steer. You know, is there an enormous amount of ego stroking and everything of being a media mogul? Yeah. You know, if you're Jeff Bezos, you know, you can buy yourself a movie studio and
Sure.
have everything you want stroked, right? You know, it's like when
you know, Roger, I now I know why they pay you the big bucks. This is why, right here.
It's like when you have so much money that you can use it as toilet paper, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Then you can buy yourself a movie studio.
Mm-hmm.
A company like AT&T is not in that position, right? And so they had to make, and John Stankey had to. I admire that when you can come to the conclusion that like this is not it. This was certainly not the easy decision. This was by far the hardest decision to make.
I agree, but
to break it apart.
I feel like that's a sign of a good leader and a person who is willing to cut the losses. It only gets worse if you don't act swiftly and with and deliberately.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was like in the last year or so was like the biggest. I'm like, wow, right? What a turn of events.
It was incredible. Just a quick gear switch, and then I don't want to keep you too long, but I just wanted to ask you about Dish. 2 questions about Dish. Does the mobile network market, like consumers of wireless, do we need Dish?
More competitors are nice, right?
So that's a principle, right? That's a principle of economics. That's a principle.
Do we need Dish for competition? If I look at the current wireless market with 3 active competitors that are going at each other like there's no tomorrow and trying to take the other one out, then from a market competition economics perspective, no. The orthodoxy that says, oh, if you have fewer MNOs, you will have less competition, does not hold true in the US, because these, again, people make different decisions. The US market with 3 MNOs is by far more competitive, by far more active than the market in Germany, where they all plays nice with each other, right?
Yes.
Then the market in even in the UK, and they try to get new competitors in there. So from that perspective, do we need a Dish to have a competitive market? No. Would it be nice? Yes, because T-Mobile was the one that really stirred things up when it was the Lowell McAdam, John Ledger, Randall Stevens scenario. Now that we have a John Stankey, a Hans Vestberg, and a Mike Sievert, the roles have a little bit changed, but somebody is always stoking that fire. And you want that stoking of the fire when somebody says, like, I'm sick and tired of being the one who gives share. I'm going to stick it to you. So that's what you need in that market. Now, if we add Charlie Ergen to that mix, he's certainly somebody who's going to stir that fire even more. He probably has like a couple of gallons of gasoline with him, right? And just throws it in for shits and giggles, just to see a couple of people run and take cover, right? So it's not going to get boring, right? Now the question is, can he pull it off, right?
It's a good question.
It's a tough. If you're coming into the market and you're going to try and build this completely different than everybody else, it has only two outcomes.
Sure.
Either he's going to be a hero or not.
My only problem, Roger, has been the general public and their non-acceptance of Dish. So here's what 8 out of 10 people are saying about Dish. Charlie Ergen, hoards spectrum. He's not building anything. He's looking to sell. Like, just name every negative spin on it. Right. It's all built into these deals, these agreements. But my point is this. You have people kicking and screaming, I want competition. But here's how I compare what they do.
We have competition.
I understand. But about Dish, they're like, yeah, bring on a fourth competitor. But here's what they do. Dish is starting a race at the very end of the line with the other carriers way out in front, and they all have Ferraris and Lamborghinis. He's got an old buggy.
Well,
it's got a flat
spaceship, right?
And it's a spaceship. I'm being realistic,
right?
I'm being realistic about this. And to make it worse, now you have people throwing stuff at you from the stands, holding you up, tripping you up, just getting in your way. Like, this is what people are saying, but what they're doing is something different. So people say they want a competitor. They say they want Dish to compete, but they also they're not really showing it.
Yeah. But a lot of people who have never worked at a wireless carrier or with a wireless carrier are the ones that say, we need another carrier, right? It's the one who are stuck in the orthodoxy of the past and don't look at what is actually happening. Prices are not going up. Networks are not becoming slower. The lack of net neutrality has not ruined the internet. All of these things, and it's not at a drip, right? So, Charlie, you can't underestimate the man. The guy started an industry, revolutionized it, made $10 billion. The guy is no dummy, right? The guy is very smart, very hard driven, hands-on, doesn't delegate for the good and bad, right?
You think he will have to now?
No.
Wow.
Look, the man is 65, roughly, right?
Yeah.
A tenfold billionaire at that age doesn't change. The same way Donald Trump didn't become more presidential when he became a candidate, right?
So the people he hired knew this going into this, that they were going to have this man on their neck.
If they didn't know it, they don't deserve any better, right? Then you didn't do your homework, right? There's enough stuff written out there how Charlie Ergen is, with his strengths and his weaknesses. And when you go in bed with him and you spend probably more time with him than with your spouse, then you should at least spend as much diligence in doing this.
Roger, they built Las Vegas. I'm talking about Dish Wireless, whatever, Project Genesis, whatever. They built Vegas in 3 months. Is that good? What do you think of that pace?
It's pedal to the metal, but antennas on towers is only one dimension of a network. Antenna, you have a software-defined network, I don't know if that software-defined network is running yet. Just because they put a lot of antennas on towers doesn't make this network run, right? Probably, putting antennas on existing towers is the least difficult part of the build.
But that was the thing that everybody was saying. They'll believe it when they see it. They said when we see towers getting built, they said when we see a network being constructed, we'll believe it. No, not you. Not you at all. Oh no, I'm not putting words
I
in
don't
your
know
mouth.
what other people say. They can.
I'm so this is kind of the consensus. This is where most of the concerns are. That he was squatting on spectrum and now he's going to put it to air. So what will the people say?
I don't know if he's putting it to air. The thing first has to work. The easy part of building that network is putting antennas on towers. That's the busy work. The guys the guys who climb up these towers are, I have the greatest respect. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do that. It's a lot of hard grunt work, right? But it's a known skill. We have done this for 30, 40 years to attach antennas to towers, right? That's no problem. But Charlie is trying to build a software-defined network. There's one that's working. That's Rakuten. And Rakuten took a long, long time to do that.
And they had a lot of speed bumps and a lot of hiccups. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they decided, and they were very, very hard hands-on. Because when you look at, I always feel like Rakuten rather wants to be an equipment vendor and an integrator than a carrier, right? So for me, the difficult part is making the software-defined network run in a stable way with companies that have somewhere done it once or twice before to never before.
I think
this is AWS's first dance. Very, very smart people, very, very successful, awesome hyperscaler, 0 wireless carrier deployments. Right.
My biggest concern with Dish is just the capex is so skimpy. He's talking about $10 billion in 7 years. There's just no way.
Not going to happen.
No way.
Not going to happen.
That is absurd. I couldn't believe they actually said it. So maybe he's just being
10 billion a year, right? He's going to say at one time, "Oh, never mind. It was 10 billion a year. You guys misunderstood me.
You misconstrued Michael."
Yeah, sorry. That's really, who would be that dumb and believe that?
Yeah,
it would be you, right? So, but the guy is, but Charlie Ergen is driven.
He invested. Right? He bought 1 million shares in his company, or 25 million shares, or something.
Yeah,
absurd.
but he made it out of his own company. He puts his money where his mouth is.
That's what I meant to say. Exactly.
You can't want more than that. I always, I have the highest respect for Charlie Ergen. The man is a force of nature.
Sure.
And if you're in his way, you can choose if it's a hurricane, a flood, or an earthquake that's going to hit you, right? But it's still a very, very difficult undertaking. And if you remember, there were now like 3 or 4 deadlines blown through it, right? And it's not.
Are you talking about the original FCC one?
Yeah.
Deadlines? Yeah.
And
he has 3 new ones.
Huh?
He has 3 new ones.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not due to a lack of trying by these guys. They didn't sit around and twiddle their thumbs, right? But I hope that network is
Me
up
too.
and running.
Yeah, me too.
That and running on all spectrum bands, not just one, like CBRS, right?
Right. Oh no, I
Uh,
don't. No way. On a low power channel.
we'll see what
Oh
happens.
my goodness! Do not do that, Roger. I was at least hoping you were gonna say AWS. At least
We'll
that one
see.
gets you full power.
We'll see. But these guys are working very, very hard. But putting antennas on towers for me is not necessarily the thing, because he has to meet the build out requirement, and build out just means coverage. So he can put up a
The boom
boomer
sites.
site,
Yeah.
and like he did with narrowband IoT, covered everybody. It's just like, and then he can use AT&T for capacity, right?
Sure, and he paid fines every step of the way.
Yeah. Well,
You
what
know,
else? Did he wanted to give up the spectrum?
yeah, exactly. The value. I mean, he just did the numbers. He said, "I'll just eat up those fines."
Yeah.
Cheaper. Yeah.
But AT&T really gave him a free card out of jail.
I know a
because
lot of people said that they bailed him out. Right.
that's a 12-year,
12 years.
12 years, 10 plus 2, right?
Mhm.
That's a long time to build capacity, right? And so, because even if that network doesn't launch in December, it's not game over. Because luckily for all of the wireless providers, there's so much money sloshing around in the system. The interest rates are so low,
Record low.
If there is even a small chance of things panning out, people are lining up to give you money.
If you're going to take a chance, now is the time.
Now
right?
is the
Because
time,
because the rates are so low.
right? Yeah. And I think even this all fails and everything, none of these people are going to fall hard, right? Yes, Charlie put $1 billion. Was it $1 billion of his own money into that?
Yeah.
I'm sure he has another.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah. I think
And
you're
he
right.
can retire comfortably on.
Sure.
I think nowadays you can still retire comfortably on $1 billion.
Yeah,
right?
You could. Sure.
Right. So,
Roger, I think everybody's dying to know. This is the fun part of the show.
All
right. Everybody's dying to know who, or I should say, which carrier SIM is in your smartphone.
The carrier SIM, one of the carrier SIMs that is in my smartphone is AT&T.
Okay.
So
which brand do you have and why?
I usually get the biggest plan because I have like demo lines from other carriers, and if I have it from one carrier, I had it from other carriers too. But I need one carrier SIM so that nobody can say, "Oh, Roger is saying that because so and so gave him free service." Fine, I'll buy the biggest unlimited plan there is, and it doesn't matter whose phone I carry around or which service I look at. Is I pay somebody for the biggest baddest thing that is out there, right?
Roger, how is the LTE on? How's the LTE on the AT&T network for you?
Well, personally, for me, it's fine because
okay. Oh, you got to sell.
That helps, right? But wherever I go, it's fine. Because when we talk about 4G is plenty. 25 megabits is all you need. That's 4K streaming video on a device where my eyes can't see the difference.
But you can't get that on an entry starter unlimited. You had to get the best plan where it doesn't.
Yeah, but I can even. In reality, I need 5 megabits, right? If I want to watch it. And everybody does that. I think there is a certain amount of speed fetishism around. My speed is higher than yours. Okay, good for you, right? I'm happy for you. On the other hand, I understand that you can't argue with faster is better. It's just like saying more money is better than less.
Mhm.
But if somebody has only $1 in his pocket, it's in a different position. If somebody has $1,000 in the pocket, right, the $1 makes less of a difference. And but it's something that's very easy to understand. It's the same way it's very easy to understand that 5G is better than 4G, right?
How's the 5G experience on AT&T, Roger?
The same. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
When you look at the technology, right? What's the difference between 4G and 5G in reality?
Like the technical?
Yeah, the old.
We've talked about it. It's the scheduling.
It's the scheduling, which is like 10%, right? Maybe 20, right? And
you're going to get a little bit better spectral efficiency with the full band, right?
So if you throw the same amount of spectrum behind 4G and 5G, one is like 10% faster. So congratulations, you went from 30 to 33. The only way you realize is a speed test.
Roger, why do you always do this? You always bring us back to earth. You always bring it all back down.
It's.
I feel like sometimes we need that, Roger. I think.
But
the realism.
What I admire about you and other guys is you're like terriers going down the technical details, right? I admire that. You do fantastic groundwork. I don't have the time nor the leisure to do it. I look at it. Does it work? I like technology, but I'm not that. I don't.
Your concern is availability and dependability. It's not so much the minutia of the detail.
Does it make a difference?
Yeah.
Does it make a difference in my life? Right. Mm-hmm. And most of the people that use wireless are not technical enthusiasts. They're not device enthusiasts. What's the number one reason why you get a new iPhone? Oh, my battery lasts longer, right? Oh, and I can take pictures when I'm at a party and the lighting isn't great.
One could argue the incentive comes from upgrading through a carrier promotion. They give them a good deal.
Well, that makes it easier, but the driver is
slightly better feature of some sort.
Slightly, why did my wife want to have a cell phone, a new iPhone? Oh, she I'm obsessive with charging. She's obsessive with not charging. I'm like, the best day in your life will be when you no longer have to charge your phone. Right, which might come actually, but 4G, 5G, consumers like simple messages. It's very difficult to argue 4G isn't 5G because every dummy knows 5 is bigger than 4, right? That's why the cable industry called their thing 10G, right? Because it's not
more G's, right?
More G's, I won, right? It's like they will never catch up to 10G, right? In our lifetime. And faster is better, and cheaper is better. It's very simple messages that you have a really hard time arguing against.
Well, here's how I look at that, Roger. T-Mobile has spent the last year aggressively attacking their perception, the reputation, right? They're trying to sway the public,
or
both. Being the cheaper carrier, they're trying to sell premium more, and then we're the fastest, we're the best 5G, most 5G. they've been driving those points home really aggressively.
Yeah, but
And just one more second, Raj, and then I'll let you kill it because I know you're going to kill it. The message is because they fell behind in LTE. They gave up on LTE, right? It's been a complete and utter focus on 5G and getting out in front.
All right. So on 4G in urban markets was network parity, where you have a differentiated user experience, aka the network sucks, right? Is in rural America, right? And they've worked now very hard on improving that.
Okay, so Roger,
the reason why people, but let me continue, right? The reason why people bought T-Mobile and buy T-Mobile is because it's cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other guys were like faster. Now, T-Mobile is basically trying to take that network differentiation away from Verizon and AT&T, and basically create so much noise in the industry based on fact or reports or however you want to do it, that basically network no longer matters. And if network no longer matters, then price is even more important.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And on price, T-Mobile wins. Thank you very much. So we just took the network off the table as a differentiator.
If that was the case, why did Peter Adderton go with Verizon?
Because they gave, I don't know.
Okay,
I haven't asked Peter, but
okay, so we could assume it's price.
If I would be Peter, I would go whoever charges me the best network.
Okay, because when I asked him, he said I went with the best network.
Well, of course, Peter is going to say that.
Okay.
Because no matter which metric and no matter who you ask, there is always somebody who says Verizon is the best, T-Mobile is the best, AT&T is the best. Of course, he's not going to say I went to a shitty network.
But clearly, whether it's the marketing or the real world, Verizon won LTE.
Hands down. But the genius of what T-Mobile has done is to basically say 4G no longer matters, even though it's the experience 75% of the time, right?
See, I think
look at your phone. Believe me that 4G doesn't matter.
Yeah, don't look at your icon and it makes no difference, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't.
No difference. 5G is better than 4G. I have better 5G. Mine is faster. Doesn't matter that the difference between loading a website on my phone and their phone is 0.1 second, and you never realize it. And latency is actually more important than that. But blah blah blah. I can't hear you.
Roger, I thank you for coming on to the show. I mean, this has been an incredible interview, and the wealth of knowledge and experience you've shared with us tonight.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. And
no, thank you for having me.
I find you very engaging in a very friend kind of way, while still maintaining those economics analyst chops through the whole thing. It's absolutely incredible. You have a gift. Like, you're able to actually speak to normal people from the normal person perspective, but you clearly have a brilliant mind when it comes to your analysis. So thank you.
Very much appreciated. Thank you for having me. And I couldn't be half as funny without as good of a partner as I had in you. Right?
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it. Too much credit, man. Thank you. Thank you for carrying the show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Okay. You have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching.